Hello. Feels like last time I saw you, you were that tall. Was it I love it. That's all.
I don't have any of this guy feels bigger.
I feel like that when I got home that hospital. Well, it's going to be a while.
My lawn is
Going crazy. You need to go to like yeah. You know, well, there's no solar rocks. It's like oil in the no, this was a different time. Yeah. Well, the spring break in South Country, North Country.
he says revise when they have the batteries, you buy them and then you
yeah, I flew home from Canada.
oh, so it doesn't feel really the third person I pay I want another I needed a hedge. Like, whatever the hedge was X amount. I could buy it. Get another week for a reason, right? Which still has never been used. I was like, wow,
You know, last time I came here, Right, on that day. I did not make that. This is Laura made that. Laura made that.
That's what I told him. I'm in Dallas, and then the team wrestled playing over
No, I'm gonna say where you want.
Jason should be here now.
Yeah.
Let me write that
Those people want to just get up on
Yeah, I think it's before. I think it's because I've heard it before. I think
And this is great. I am so very
Can we have everybody take their seats, please? We're getting ready to get started.
Oh, thank you. All that very most.
Please say I'm 30, I'm in my prime.
Sure.
You should sit up there.
Yeah, I'm
You know, him as a young child looks a lot like Jack. Yeah. Jack does not. Never sit up there.
I just go where I'm told.
All right.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before we get started, I just want to let you all know that my brothers and I will be providing dinner at Leon's for everyone after the eulogies and the visitation. So you're all more than welcome to show up. Can we bow our heads in prayer, please? Father, we thank you for today and the blessing that is the celebration of the lives of Mom and Greg. As we grieve, may we draw closer to you and seek out comfort and peace that only you can provide. We pray for strength for the family and friends here today and for safety for those that have traveled long distances. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray. Amen. Amen. On behalf of Jim, Gil, Bruce, and the rest of our family, I want to thank you all for coming and showing how genuinely loved Mom and Greg were by so many. Raising 5 boys, oftentimes alone, as our dad was serving in the Army, would be a challenge for anyone, but Mom handled it just like everything else in her life with grace, dignity, compassion, and strength. She was the strongest person I've ever known. And she quietly instilled that same strength in all of us. I hope I can show that today as we honor her in the way she deserves. Before I talk about Mom, I'd like to talk about Greg. He was the youngest of 5, so he didn't always get a fair shake growing up. Even though we were only 18 months apart, he and I weren't awfully close as kids. We had different interests, different friends, but I always envied the quality Greg had that I didn't. He was always the one to help anyone, being a neighbor, a friend, or a stranger, and be where he needed to be. He was there once again for Mom, and for Laura, Savannah, and Rebecca, and for all of his friends and neighbors, just like he always was. He was also the guy that was the keeper of our cabin up north, and upgraded it from the rustic old hunting cabin that it once was to a place where many of the people in this room were able to enjoy whenever they wanted. He loved that property and put so much hard work into it. Greg was the type of guy that maybe didn't always know how to build or fix something, but that never stopped him from trying. He was the proverbial jack of all trades and never met a project he couldn't handle. I regret that he left us when he did, before I could tell him how much I admired him and how I wish we could have bridged some of the gaps between us. Proverbs 31:31 states, "Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates." Throughout her life, our mom was the epitome of hard work, determination, and effort. And I know most of the good parts of all of us came from her. Although she often raised her sons alone, due to my dad's military or work commitments, she always did her best and tried so hard to give us the best life possible, even in our humble surroundings. Mom was one of the queens of Oak Street, where we all grew up. We were blessed to grow up during a time when family was such an important thing, not just to us, but to all of the rest of that core group of families led by amazing people like our mom and dad. The Swims, the Kegels, Tomlinsons, and all of the other wonderful people in Oak Street were all like second families to us. And everyone looked out for everyone else. So many good memories of backyard parties, at people's homes at Christmas, and the fun, silly times that I like to remember Mom for. She was a true friend to everyone, and she had an amazing way to make anyone feel welcome and cared for. It was that way growing up and continued once we all left the nest and would return to visit. Whenever we would come home, there would always be enough food to feed an army, even if only one of us was coming home. Pizza, sandwiches, her famous spaghetti, or of course, White Castles. She always took care of us, and she was mom to our friends and families as well. She always made that little house on Oak Street seem so much bigger, just because of how she loved us. Most of that original group of parents are gone now, but their memories live, and all of us Oak Street kids. Mom had some strong passions in life. She was an Avon lady for decades and was still filling orders up until the days leading to her death. She loved her customers who became lifelong friends, and she enjoyed the opportunities to travel to various Avon conventions, to include New York and Las Vegas. I have very vivid memories of Greg and I delivering her Avon books for her in all different kinds of weather. Blizzards and storms would not deter Mom from getting us out there in her car, dropping us off at one end of the street, and dropping off those books at house after house, until we were drenched or frozen or sweaty as she waited for us at the other end. I look back and I feel guilty about complaining about it so much, because she always did so much for us. Cub Scouts, Little League, school events. She was always so busy, but made sure she was there for us. She had a passion for raising her sons. She also had a passion for our dad, and I loved how after we all left the nest, their relationship seemed to grow and grow, and they became closer and closer. When she worked at Meyer, she always had evening shifts, and Dad, without fail, would go to meet her for dinner every day. Our gruff, stern Army dad had finally softened up. And he did so because of Mom's relentless love for him. After he passed away, Mom never had eyes for anyone else and lived the last 33 years of her life as a single woman in that little house on Hope Street. I will not say she was alone because she had her dear friends, her family, and her faithful love and memories of my dad to keep her company. While Mom never had any daughters, not for lack of trying, she did also have a strong love for her daughters-in-law and many grandchildren and great-grandchildren they brought into her life. She loved being a grandmother and loved spoiling her grandkids whenever she could. Regardless of how far away they were, she always made them feel special and loved. Through divorces and changes, she never took sides and always maintained her relationships with her daughters-in-law. She loved very much the women in our lives who became the daughters that she never had. I hope the memories of Mom live in you the way they do with us. I miss her terribly, and I think of her all the time. I remember the calls we would have, usually on my way home from work, where we would talk about nothing, yet still talk about everything. Fox News would always be on in the background, and often Greg would be there with her. I remember all the garage sales and the Avon and the great laugh she had, usually when she was reliving some great memory. I have clear images of little funny things that happened to her, such as getting her hand frozen to the pole in the backyard when she was trying to ice it down to make a skating rink. Getting stuck on the roof when she climbed up to try to fix the antenna. Locking herself out of the house when I was about 3 years old. And her climbing through the living room window. She said I told her, "I'll catch you, Mommy." With my arms wide open, and I surely would have. While cancer attacked her far too many times, she never once complained, never asked the question, why me? And quietly fought with courage and resiliency and grace and strength. That's who she was, the strongest woman I know. I think too about the conversations we had in the months leading up to her death about her faith and salvation. It gave me such comfort to know that she had professed her faith and drawn closer to God. And I know it gave her the peace that only He could provide through all of her hard times. On the day she passed away, after she had a bath and had been cleaned up and had fresh clothes put on, I held her hand and told her that it was okay. She had fought long enough and could let go now, be with Dad. She could no longer talk at that point, but she gave me the sweetest smile and squeezed my hand a little, and still taking care of me. She always did. In Ecclesiastes 3:1-4, it says, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance." Today we mourn, but we also celebrate the lives of Mom and Greg. My prayer is that their souls are at peace, and both are holding Dad's hands in heaven.
Just in case.
So as you were talking, I was just thinking of a couple great stories about your mom. And one of them was how she used to dress up every Halloween because she loved having those costumes when the kids came to the door. And I remember once, Becca was little and we came over and Rebecca wasn't quite sure. Your mom was dressed up like a witch and she had green paint on and she looked great. And Rebecca looked at her and she says, "Grandma, you witch?" it was so cute. But she just loved dressing up for the kids and loved Halloween. So the story of life has many chapters. One bad chapter doesn't mean that the prior 50 chapters were not good. The sum of a life should be looked at as a whole. And I think we need to do that with Greg. When I think of Greg, I think of many things. I think of the man I loved, the father of my children, a beloved son, brother, uncle, a man who enjoyed spending time with Greg. He was a Trekkie and he loved Smokey and the Bandit. But he was also a man who struggled and he hated his demons that changed him from the man he truly wanted to be. So I met Greg in early 1991. He was working a second job in the evening at Square Lanes, and I was bowling in a ladies' league. We had talked for a few months, but he never asked me out. And he used to put these little signs on the projector, you know, "Nice strike, Laura," and "Nice form," and and then "Good game," and things like that. But he never asked me out. I thought that was kind of strange. But so it was my last night of bowling, and I'm walking out. You know, I'm not going to see this guy ever again. And I actually had written down my phone number and put it in my back pocket. And I was just waiting to see if he was going to ask me out. Finally, he came over, very nervously asked me out. So I never had to use that phone number. But about 3 months later, this is kind of a funny story. We were having dinner downtown at the top of the Renson. It was Grand Prix weekend. It was my birthday, so we were having a really nice time. You know, it was fun down there. It was a party atmosphere. Towards the end of dinner, he got out a package and set it in front of me, and I looked at it and I thought, "Oh no, he got me jewelry. It's too soon." You know, got me jewelry. So I opened it up and it was a diamond ring. And we had been dating for 3 months, maybe 2 months. And I said, "Well, what does this mean?" He says, "Well, it can mean whatever you want it to mean." I'm like, "Okay." So I actually closed it back up and moved it towards the middle of the table. And you know, we finished dinner and he picked it up, he put it in his pocket, and we didn't talk about it for a while. But he did, you know, that's just Greg. That's just him, you know. And then he actually, you know, about 3 months later, he did propose at the top of a roller coaster in Cedar Point. I was nervous about meeting Greg's mom and dad, especially his dad, but I shouldn't have been nervous. You know, I came to love them both. Especially Shirley. I was truly blessed to have her as my mother-in-law friend. For many years. The girls and I miss her very much. And we really miss our girls' night out dinners, which we did about every other week. We would pick a new restaurant and we would go out for dinner and try the new wine or whatever. So, Greg and I were married, I don't know if people know, we were married 29 years ago today. So June 6th is our anniversary. He wanted to start a family immediately. but I was able to convince him to hold off for a couple of years. Savannah Arlena Parks was born April 23rd, 1994, and then Rebecca Lucille Parks was born June 12th, 1998. In March of 97, we lost a little boy named Samuel Allen. Greg's greatest accomplishment in life was being a father. He was incredibly proud. He was incredibly proud of our daughters, about how accomplished they are, how smart and beautiful both of them are for graduating college, and for how driven they are about the things they want. He loved their independence, their kindness, and loving natures. For many years, Rebecca did competitive cheer, and I don't know if you know what competitive cheer is, but it's nothing like cheerleading, which I didn't know when I started this. It's a sport that requires way too much money for practice and competitions, uniforms, and at least one trip out of town every month, probably for 9 months out of the year. I don't believe Greg enjoyed watching those competitions, but he didn't miss one. He was, and he never complained about the money, which is unbelievable, because it was very costly with the practices and the uniforms and the travel, but he never complained about it. He was there for years while Rebecca did, and Savannah too, did competitive cheer. So he was proud of his girls, and he wanted to show them his support. Greg always had stories about growing up on Oak Street. He did not have a large extended family like I do. However, I believe the neighbors on Oak Street were like his family to him, especially Faye and Gertrude. He recounted numerous stories about how his older brothers constantly teased and taunted him, and I'm sure he gave as good as he got. But he told me stories about how he would hide out at Faye's and Gertrude's, seeking refuge there. Is that true?
That's very true.
He also had crazy stories about boys' weekends up north with Bob and crew during the teens and early 20s. I won't repeat some of those stories because it was a lot of drinking and shenanigans. And Greg served 4 years in the Marines. He was very proud that he was a Marine. A few years ago, Greg joined the Marine Corps League in Wyandotte and served as an officer of the League at one point. Greg liked spontaneity, which sometimes just drove me crazy because I'm a planner. He was good at just because gifts. At least once a month he would bring me flowers. They usually were Kroger's manager's special flowers, but they were flowers. And they brightened my day. He liked the surprise and the anticipation of doing something unexpectedly nice for someone else. The love of spontaneity didn't change as he got older. We went out west as a family, and he ran it, and he did it, and he had a pretty good time too. Greg always had a great rapport and respect for seniors. He loved hearing their stories and also enjoyed helping them out. He always showed great respect and deference, always giving up his seat, sitting and talking with them. In fact, if anyone walked into a room and there was not a place to sit, Greg was always the first one to jump up and give his seat. I don't think Greg liked change. He enjoyed memories and items from his past. He had a hard time with letting go of anything that held a memory. I think that's why he loved being up at the cabin. It was a constant. We made so many happy memories at the cabin, Memorial Days and July 4th, Labor Day weekends, where we had 20 plus family and friends visiting, hiking, bike riding on North Country Trail, Bob's Boulevard, ice cream at Nate's, s'mores around the campfire, fireworks, all-day boating, adventures at Clay Island, jet skiing, even sledding off the top of the roof of the cabin, making snowmen, the Olympics, trips to Traverse City and the Cherry Festival. watching movies outside on the side of the cabin. Thank you, Jerry. Great meals, you know, Greg just loved those big breakfasts and those big meals. That was one of his favorite parts. Playing Mario's and card games and spoons, and breakfast at Rosie's and shopping at the junk store and the flea market, which he loved. The kids hated. I think so many of us have great memories of him up north as captain of the boat. His really awful cheap haircut that he got at the flea market for like $3. The firework mishap where he threw an empty firework container into the fire and it wasn't empty. A few drinks. And the time Jerry and Greg saved people from a fire up north. So Jerry can tell you that story too. Greg made it possible for us to enjoy so many things up north. He just wanted everyone to have a good time, and he was the ultimate host. He also went deer hunting almost every year, except for the last few years. He would get his bow and his gun and go traipsing through the woods. He never once got a deer. I don't think he really wanted to get one. He just enjoyed going up north, spending the guide time at the cabin with his friends, eating chili, watching Smokey and the Bandit. Those are the times he enjoyed. Greg went back to school for his associate's degree and then went through the police academy. He then enrolled to finish his bachelor's degree. He had a 4.0 at Henry Ford at Schoolcraft and also at Eastern Michigan. He was so smart, he never finished his bachelor's, just life got in the way. Greg was fiercely independent. I think he was that even from a young age. I remember a story he told me about wanting to go to a store about 10 miles from his home on Joy Road and Telegraph. So he got on his bike and just rode down there. He was like 10 or 11 years old. I wasn't even allowed to cross the street without permission at that point. I think he was just so independent. And he could do anything. He could work on cars, plumbing, electrical work, put up drywall, tile. If he didn't know how to do it, he would read research until he figured it out. His mom told us stories about how when he was 5 or 6, she locked him in the bedroom and he took apart the door handle to escape. She said he took apart a lot of things, including their telephone. He basically built most of the cabin up north, including doing all the plumbing and electrical work. He also finished our basement. He enjoyed working on projects around the house, but he also enjoyed helping others, and everyone always appreciated how he was always willing to help. If someone's car was broken down on the side of the road, Greg would stop to see if he could help, change a tire, give them a ride. It made me nervous, especially if he had the kids in the car, but he always did that. And the girls and I never had to worry about our cars. He just always changed windshield wipers, fixed brakes, replaced tires. He enjoyed taking care of us. He also used to talk about how Mom could do any household repair and how we learned from her. For so many years, Dad wasn't around. Here comes Savannah with a puppy. That was adorable. And we all fell in love with her. But I think Greg was surprised at how much he loved Sophie, our little Chihuahua mix, who bore no resemblance to the dogs of his childhood, which, he always had fond memories of. But although technically Savannah's dog, Sophie loved Greg the most. Greg was Sophie's person. He would take her everywhere. He would put her in the cart at Home Depot and we'd go shopping. He'd take her to the car wash, go to visit his mom, go up north. Anywhere that he could, he would take Sophie. She wanted to be with him all the time. I think she's a little sad sometimes because she doesn't know what happened to him and didn't have the opportunity to say goodbye. I have so many others and reach out to those who are in need to make this world a better place. And I know this world is a better place because he was part of it. Thank you.
My turn? So I know you're dying to hear the story of the fire up north and how me and Greg saved this. I won't tell it. I obviously will tell it for another time. I'm going to read this from my phone. Try to. My phone's about ready to die. So Julie, my lovely wife, said, if your phone dies, I will spend the last 3 minutes singing a song. You don't want my phone to die, trust me. Writing this was difficult for me because the Greg I once knew was a different man from the one most recently. The Greg I once knew was full of laughs, never short of words, and always busy tinkering it with something. If not his own, then for someone else. The Greg I once knew was a loving dad and uncle to my kids. He would never do anything to harm them or anyone else. Greg was always quick to answer a call for help or for assistance. I remember joking with Greg when he called me one time to help him move a hot tub. We laughed because the two of us had broken our backs over the years moving objects that we should never have. Old refrigerators, pool tables, and now a hot tub. But we did it. Matter of fact, I think we moved 2 hot tubs. Neither of them worked. Maybe the third one worked, I'm not sure. We did it, and we always had a good story to tell about the aches and pains afterwards. I have so many great memories meeting Greg after work, Canton Brew Works, sitting around the patio, just talking about nothing, making fun, referencing old TV shows, Star Trek episodes. One of my most favorite memories with Greg and him and I and Rob, the 3 of us went up to Mesick for the weekend. We called it the Guys Weekend. We met up with some locals at the Bucksnort. To this day, I don't know their name. We later went to their garage. We stayed up till, I think it was sunlight before we finally ended up going home, leaving this dude's garage. We later referenced the Guy-Raj story. So if you ever hear me say Guy-Raj, it's all about Greg and Rob and I and our up north and hanging out till wee hours in the morning in some guy's garage. I remember taking late evening boat rides, sitting under the stars, drinking beers, listening to music, echoing from the campground. Walking to Nate's country store with the dogs, getting ice cream with the kids. So many great memories of up north and spending time with family. I said this was difficult for me to write. The Greg that passed had been different for some time. Our friendship wavered because of his addiction. I had a hard time allowing him into my life, into my family's life, because of his addiction. My heart was heavy for my sister-in-law, and more so for my nieces. I couldn't come to grips with my friend's actions. When Greg passed, I felt angry at first, and I was angry for some time. But as these weeks had passed, I was reminded of the Greg that I once knew. He was a loving husband, a loving dad, a caring uncle, the man that would do anything for anyone, as we've already heard.
So Laura stole a lot of my lines. But we all know of Greg's good qualities, his kindness and generosity, which no doubt came from his mother. There wasn't a kinder or more generous person than Shirley. She loved to give fancy gifts to people on special occasions, and she always brought a big tray of shrimp to our family gatherings. We're gonna miss that. And she loved her painting parties, and I'm gonna miss doing those with her. I believe some of Greg's qualities came from his dad. He would always stand up and when introduced to someone, he always shook another man's hand. In fact, he taught my grandsons at a very young age to shake hands. Right, guys? Yeah. And Greg would be, Laura mentioned this, he would be the first to jump up to give you his seat. And if there wasn't enough chairs, he'd go find them and bring them to you. He never failed to do this. And Greg, as mentioned, he could fix anything, plumbing, electrical, computers, cars, you name it. Even if he didn't know how, he would try. I can't count the times he's helped me around my house. He's installed hot water tanks, a garbage disposal, sinks, he's helped me with my car, and he would always get my snowblower going when I couldn't. One time my computer crashed, and I took it to the Geek Squad at Best Buy. They couldn't fix it, so they said, we gotta send it out. So they sent it out, they still couldn't fix it, so I let Greg look at it within a week, probably with you guys' help. He had it fixed, and it's still running. Not only could he fix anything, he was willing to do it for anyone, and he enjoyed it. One time, a friend of mine had a tree blow over, and Becca was with him, I think, when she went over there. And he shows up the next morning with his chainsaw and took care of it, without even being asked. And Greg had a quality of those that spent a lot of time with him, is how far he would go to entertain us. And Laura mentioned doing the charades around the campfire, his rendition of the MC Hammer dance. He was so indignant because we couldn't figure out what he was doing. And then the time he got in his truck, rode up and down the road for us to guess how fast he was going. As it turns out, cars were not going as fast as we thought they were. And then, of course, the fireworks. You've never seen so many people scramble when those rockets started shooting off. You remember how mad Dennis and Linda got? That was pretty funny. Oh, let's see. Greg also liked to debate, and I'm sure that we've all been on the receiving end of his debating. I don't know if he took the opposite just to argue, or if he liked getting you riled up, but he enjoyed it. And I think it was all in jest on his part. But one time he argued the Bible with me. Laura was in the car all the way up north. Do you remember that? And this past year, though, he's called me many times to talk about God and the Bible. And I guess he met a chaplain at the VA that he really liked. And he'd been giving him some literature and a Bible to read. And so Greg had been calling me to talk about this. And I believe that Greg was realizing that God loved him, heaven was real, and Jesus was the only way to get there. And I can picture Greg in heaven now, going around shaking hands, making sure everyone has a seat, and looking for someone to debate with. Thank you.
Once again, we'd like to thank everybody for coming and just honoring Mom and Greg like you have. It's just a blessing it's a blessing for us to be a part of their lives. And I think everyone here is better off for doing it. So we're all going to meet at 4:30 at Leon's. spend the rest of their time here reminiscing. But thank you again for coming.